So today the topic is knife sharpening. Now I'm going to be showing you some of the methods, means, and techniques that I've utilized over the years, what I've picked up, what I've learned, what works for me. Now there are quite a few different schools of thought when it comes to sharpening blades. Everybody has their own way, I understand. I'm going to go ahead and throw my 2 cents in. This is going to be with an emphasis on bushcraft, survival, and a few primitive means. So we're going to go over some of the market stuff, the things you can buy and hopefully have on you if you're needing to sharpen a blade, especially when you're in a survival situation. We'll also go over some of the primitive materials and things that you can use and utilize out and about that might get you by, whether you're in a survival situation and just don't have it, or even those of you that like the post-apocalyptic scenarios. So let's go over some of the sharpening implements before we get on to technique. Now I've got a variety of different tools here that I utilize to sharpen up blades. Shouldn't be too expensive, they're not going to break the bank. $5 to $15, most of them off the internet. Some of them actually garage sale finds, so you just got to pick them up wherever you can. Now we're going to go ahead and start out with this one right here. This is an oil stone. Some people call it a whetstone. This is the one that I grew up learning on. Now, a lot of us have these. Our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers had these for decades and decades. This was the gold standard of stone. Now, a couple cool features on these. First and foremost, it has the wooden base. And you're going to find out real soon, once you start messing with these smaller oil stones, is that you're going to run out of room with your hand. And your knife is going to be up there. So being able to have a good sturdy base to hold on to is pretty nice. These are also two-tone. And what that means is that the top and bottom are 2 different grits, and so you're going to have a coarse side and a fine side. If your knife is really dull, you can go ahead and start it off on the coarse side, sharpen it up as far as you can get it, and then simply flip the stone over to the fine side to finish it off. And again, sharpen up that edge until you've taken it as far as it can go. I've also been calling this a wet or an oil stone, and the idea behind that is that you'll take some of this oil and you'll give yourself a sheen on it. You might see, if you play around with these, that if you sharpen the knife without any water, without any liquid on it, you get a fine, dark powder on it. And that's going to be the actual shavings, the particles of the metal coming off your blade. Now, that'll work for a little while, but up to a point, you'll actually start to dull your blade going through all those particles. And so the oil, the water, is going to pull that fine dust away from the blade, away from the sharpening surface, and allow you to get a keener edge. So pretty cool when it comes down to that. Now, you'll see that I've got different sizes and different types here. You can get really large, and this is not going to be something that you have in your survival pack, but we have them laying around here on the property because they sharpen up our axes and our machetes. But great big sharpening stones. For survival, bug out gear, and EDC, things like that, I have much smaller whetstones. This is actually my favorite one as far as size and as far as grit. Again, that is two-toned. But the great thing about these is you can go all the way down to a really small size, which allows you to sprinkle these guys everywhere. So throw them in all the packs, throw them in your truck. You should never be without a sharpening stone. Now, we even have the diamonds back here. This is the new age, new generation stuff. 3 different grits. The concept is the same. The way that the stone was put together, or the sharpening surface was put together, is a bit different, but very effective, very efficient, very thin, very lightweight, easy to throw in anywhere. So that is the idea. Now these last 2 sharpeners are ones that I definitely endorse. This is one that I've had for upwards of 15 years. This is a pin sharpener. Now you see it comes apart. Go ahead and put the head back on there, tighten it up. There's a couple cool things with this. It looks like your normal kitchen knife sharpener, and that's the way it works for the most part. You take the blade, put it to the angle you want, and simply sharpen it on out. That works out really well. But you'll also notice here on the very top, there's a groove cut into that sharpening surface, and that is for sharpening up fish hooks. And I use that quite a bit, not just to recondition a fish hook out on the trail, but to actually build fish hooks out of wire and Coke can tops, actually. So that worked out really well. Also, if you have a serrated edge, this will actually work as well. So you take it on the serrated edge, you bring it down over again, and a lot of those edges that your normal knife sharpeners cannot get to. This is designed to get that edge for you. It works out really well. So I've saved what I think is the neatest knife sharpener for last, and this is my EDC. Now in the past, over the years, I really haven't been a fan of knife sharpeners that had a preset angle. And what that means is that the angle that these two sharpeners come together is going to be the permanent angle of the blade that you use on this. And this one actually has two different sides to use it on, one fine, one coarse. If you do find one, just like this, that has the angle that'll work for you, which I really like this one, then you're all set. Because every time you put your blade in there and pull it through, you're going to get the exact uniform angle. No guesswork at all. If you do like using your knife sharpeners like your traditional whetstone and oilstone, you also have an edge on here on top to drag your blade across to go ahead and do that as well. So good all around, real light, and versatile. Pretty cool products. Alright, on to sharpening technique. Now we're going to go ahead and start out with my large whetstone, because that's going to make it real easy for you to see what I'm doing. With a lot of those people out there instructing on how to sharpen blades, they're going to throw out a lot of numbers, namely angles. So the big thing, the big idea is the wider the angle. The wide angles, you're looking at 30 and 35 degrees. Those are going to be for axes, for machetes, things for hitting wood and being out in the bush quite a bit. As you get and sharpen that blade and thin down that angle, what you're going to find is that although you can cut things a lot easier, your blade's going to dull up a lot faster and it's going to get damaged quite quickly. So you'll see people with bushcraft skills and bushcraft blades being at about 30 degrees, all the way down to your super expensive chef knives at 10 degrees or less, the surgical scalpel ideas. Now most of those angles are not going to mean anything. And you just saw me put the oil on here. Again, that helps keeps a lot of the particulate matter that we're going to build off of the cutting edge and off of the sharpening edge. But the main idea here is that whatever edge you put on here, whatever angle it is, you need to be consistent. A lot of people, especially when you buy new knives, you're not quite sure, you want to be a stickler for it. You can actually go onto the website or look on the product packaging and find out what the factory edge is. Those of you that really get into this, you don't really care. You go and re-edge it anyway and put it at the angle you like. Now this knife right here is actually under 20 degrees. This is my Bowie knife. You've seen this in all my videos. This is a lot sharper than most bush blades would be, and I use it for everything. But I stay on top of my blades quite a bit. We sharpen them almost every single day, and it's utilized. Now the downside to that, keeping it this sharp with this edge, is that with the amount of sharpening, give it a decade and a half, and my blade's going to start moving back and back and back, and I'm going to run out of blade eventually. So understand that if you have that steeper angle, you'll be able to keep your blade, your knife, for longer, assuming you're going to use it for decades, and it will stay sharper for longer. Again, if that knife's incredibly sharp, you can have less work to do, but you'll have to sharpen it quite a few more times. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. Now there are different techniques that people use. They'll have a push or a pull. I usually take up next to the hilt and I'll move all the way down to the blade. And I'll do this, especially with the coarse side, in threes. I'm going to go ahead and flip the blade over and pull back towards myself. Make sure your thumb and your fingers aren't pushed up around there. Again at the hilt, all the way to the end. A lot of this is just going to be practice. I don't expect to pick it up and for it to feel natural at first. But take it to the end. 3. Notice I'm sitting there banging that thing too fast. And pull it 3. All the way to the end. Now you do want to make sure that as you do this, go in slow-mo, that you're not coming over the edge, scratching up your blade, or not being able to sharpen the very end there. Now, you have other people that like to start at the very tip of the blade, and they like to push it all the way to the hilt. And that works for them. Again, you want to even out the strokes. And come back all the way to the end, And you might notice that my wrist and my arm doesn't want to do that as well. Again, this is going to take practice. Those guys, they do this all the time. They're going to make it look real easy. For me, this is where it's at. Now, we're doing this symmetrically, 3 and 3 at first with the coarse side. And what that means is that we're going to keep our blade, our edge, identical on both sides. You don't want it to be flatter or more plain on one side than the other. You don't want to sharpen things down way far and wear it down on one side and have very little of an edge on the other. Also, you can put too much pressure on here and start folding over that edge. The metal will actually begin to curl, and once it curls, you're going to lose it. You don't really have an edge anymore. You just have a curled piece of metal that should be just barely visible, but not effective as far as a cutting edge. Now, once you've done this for quite a bit, and you've got this as sharp as possible, like I said earlier, you can flip it over. Well, again, add some oil. I've already got some oil on here. You see a little bit of the black coming off of the blade. And the idea behind the fine side is much the same, but this is a finishing side. So what I'll do, if my blade's getting close to finishing, is that I'll make sure that I'm going one side per stroke. And so that's going to keep my blade perfectly symmetrical all the way through. As you get to the end, you should be putting less and less pressure on that blade. You want it to get as sharp as possible, and that's the idea. Alright, so that's basic technique as far as how you're moving it back and forth. So you can push it, you can pull it. A lot of people actually, you'll see this right here. That's for really working with a dull blade. They'll actually sit there and push it as well. You'll see people nail it to trees, push it down on the ground, do all kinds of stuff. But this is what works for me. Now, as far as angles go, we started to talk about that. 30-35 degree angle is for hatchets. It's going to be about right there. As you bring that angle down, you're going to get sharper and sharper and sharper. And I like a sharp edge, but understand the sharper it is, the easier it is to get damaged, and the faster you're going to lose that keen edge. So again, a lot of bush blades, a lot of axes. Machetes going to be up here. As you get down to the sharper surgical stuff, your angle is going to be here. Now the big trick here is going to be uniformity, being able to keep the exact same angle every time you flip that blade back and forth. And a lot of it's just going to be muscle memory. Some people actually put their thumb up there, and what they're going to do is use that thumb as a guide. Same thing whenever it flips over, I'll put my finger down, especially when I'm trying to get a certain angle, and I'll put it in between there, and I bring it back to the same spot each time, all the way through. Alright, now with a lot of your blades, if you're wanting to go down below a 20 degree angle like this knife has been brought down to, you're going to have to go through a lot of steel to do so. So if you want that angle to be down here, you're going to be working on it with the coarse side of the stone for quite a while. Now if you need a fast edge real quick, within about 4 or 5 minutes, you can bring it up to 30 degrees. I can start sharpening this, and within a few minutes I'll have an edge capable of skinning a pig pretty quick. But it just kind of depends on what kind of time you had to put into it and what you plan on doing with it. So that's your oil stone. Very basic. Again, it's mostly just getting it in your hands, trying it out, and putting in the time to develop your own style. I'm going to go ahead and use my Leatherman to show you the EDC that I have. And we're going to use the straight blade on the Leatherman Wave. Okay? Excuse the dirt on there. It's a working blade. But this works really, really well. Now, the big thing is, again, it says you had that up there. You don't want to put your hands, your thumbs, your fingers, any place that you're going to cut yourself. And so you're going to find your own way to hold this. You're going to put that blade down in the crook of those two angles, that one angle, the two sharpening rods, and you're going to pull down. And I'm not having to put any kind of pressure on there. Every 5 to 10 strokes, you can come back and check the edge of the blade. Okay? Don't ever put your finger onto the blade, or you see people using their thumbnails, things like that. Check it in a smart way. Okay? So that works out real fast, real easy. Again, you can use this edge just like you did with the whetstone. You can put the correct angle on there. Just like that. So if you're restricted to a purely primitive method of sharpening your knife, you're really looking at graded stone. Now, if you're getting down to surgical steel and cookware, you might be able to use a leather strop, barber style. But when it comes to bushcraft and survival, you usually look for a much rougher edge. Now, we've had sandstone around us in several of these clips. Understand that there are different grades of sandstone. The stuff that I have is way too rough. I might be able to put an edge onto a nasty axe, even a flint axe. But as far as knives are involved, this is probably going to dull my edge more than anything. So, wrong thing for what I have. Now, you find us in a gully right now, and gullies are pretty amazing places because as you climb up them or down them, you can find different grades, different layers, different types of stone. And that's what we're about to do. There's a layer up here about 1 inch thick, nice thin layer, it's uniform, it's just what I'm looking for. So we'll travel up here and I'll show you just how to find it. Just to illustrate one more time, no matter how flat I get this sandstone, the grit of the sand is too low for me to put a decent edge on this knife. Right, so even coming across it one at a time, it might sound like that's a pretty good sound, but I'm actually dulling my blade every time I do that because this edge is a much higher grit, so choose wisely. Chuck's got one of the pieces that we found a little earlier. Not finding the layer, but this gully's been through a lot of floods this last year, so we're finding chunks and parts and pieces. It's probably covered over. But this is what we were looking for. Check it out. A bit of a broken piece, not the most durable stone, but very useful for what we're trying to do. Now you want to clean it up, wash it up and get all the dirt off, all the debris, because that's going to interfere with your sharpening surface. One of the things that you can do to make sure that this becomes just as flat as possible is to get 2 pieces and to kind of grind them over each other, and after a while you'll get a superior surface. But the idea is that as you condition your blade, or whatever you're trying to sharpen, that stone will get more and more and more suited to that purpose. But there you go, guys. Nice primitive sharpening stone. Alright, so I lied. I actually found the layer. And again, this is sandwiched between sandstone, top and bottom. But search around a little bit, you never know what you might find. So this is a bit of an interesting location. This is a burn and dump site, almost historic at this point. Now, in areas that you have gullies and ravines, especially places that humans have been habitating for a while, you're going to find that they like to dump things in low areas. They don't like to dig holes, but they'll utilize ravines and put all the trash and discard stuff in it. So lots of bottles, lots of good scavenge. But for today, we're looking for items that can be utilized to sharpen our knives. Now, down here, we have pieces of pottery, and that's what we're looking for. Pottery, ceramics, things that have a nice flat edge. So not quite right there, but once you start finding those pots, once you start finding those pieces, you're on the right track. My favorite would be the bottom of a ceramic mug. It works out really, really well. So we're going to dig around in this for a little while, find what we can find, hopefully come up with a good mug, and show you how it's done. So this is what we've come up with. It is a broken coffee mug. You can kind of see where the handle was right there. But as they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So what you'll find with these old coffee mugs, your clay pottery, your crockery, is that on the very bottom, there's a finely porous seal all the way around the lip. And that is perfect for using to sharpen your knife. So just as you would with a whetstone, take your knife, line it up, give yourself the angle you need, and you can put one heck of an edge on a knife using this. That's #1 preferred right there, guys. That's how you do it. Just to cover all the basics, this would be your zombie apocalypse landscape. A lot of people like that post-apocalyptic look. everything's desolate, everything's been knocked down, but wherever humans have been, you're going to find a lot of building materials, industrial waste. Now, I've seen people using concrete, especially cinder block. I would not use cinder block to sharpen anything but maybe a nasty axe that I don't care about. Not all concrete is the same. Not all mortar is the same. What you want to find is the highest grain, the finest grain concrete you can, if you do have to use this as a sharpening surface. Now, I would not put my blade of my knife on here, but I would go ahead and use an axe head perhaps, or machete, but definitely not a cinder block. Now, other things that you'll find when you're looking at buildings that have been knocked down are terracotta. Terracotta bricks, especially around fireplaces. You can break them up and fashion them into any size sharpening stone that you want. But terracotta is very fine usually, and that'll do as a very, very decent sharpening stone. So that's definitely an option. Now, one of the other things that I often come across is granite, and especially the underside of granite countertops. You're going to find that they're a little bit rougher. They don't have the polish on there, they don't have all the gloss, and they work really well. So they are machine flattened, and they are of a grain and grade that will get a really good blade going on a knife. So you can run it across. Hear that sound? That will work. All right. Well, guys, we've covered some of the basics. We've gone out there a little bit. Undoubtedly, I'll get a few comments down in the comment section about how unorthodox some of this stuff is, or how I've missed the marks. But hopefully you've learned something. Guys, like and subscribe, and as always, till next time. For those of you curious about that nasty machete at the very beginning, this is a 1941 Army issue machete. Has the original handle made out of resin, and it is cherry, other than some of that South Texas rust patina that we have on there. Now, we use this quite a bit, and it gets abused from time to time, but most importantly, it was made right. So it is as straight and true as the day it was forged. Now, we do maintain our tools quite a bit. At least once a week, these are sharpened. If I have this big stone, just as before, I start out with a hilt, and I run that blade all the way down. You want to make sure that you get the hands and feet away from it. Any kind of appendages, yours or others, stay away from that cutting edge. Just work that blade back and forth just as you would a smaller blade. Now, one thing I forgot to mention was, when it comes to larger blades, you're not always going to be carrying around a giant sharpening stone in machete country. Now, those smaller sharpening stones, they can still work with this blade pretty easily. What you're going to be doing is reversing the process. Instead of running the blade over the stone, you're going to be running the stone over the blade. So take it all the way to the end. And when you do this, not only are you able to hit that entire blade with some pretty good precision, but you're taking away a lot of the possibility of cutting yourself. 3 on one side, 3 on the other. That's how you do it, guys. But start out with a good piece of steel, a good quality knife, maintain it, take care of it, keep it sharp, and it's likely to save your life.